There's a whisper in the shadows of history, a chilling echo of stories that defy explanation. Picture this, a crumbling tomb, its walls etched with symbols no one can decipher, the air thick with the weight of centuries. Or imagine a lonely stretch of road where travelers swear they've seen a figure vanish into the mist, a ghostly remnant of some long-forgotten tragedy. These aren't just campfire tales, they're eerie myths and legends that have clung to the edges of our world, passed down through generations, blurring the line between what we know and what we can't explain. History is full of mysteries that send shivers down the spine, events so strange, so unsettling, that even the most skeptical minds pause. What if some of these stories hold a sliver of truth? What if the past is hiding secrets darker than we've dared to imagine? From ancient curses that seem to strike without mercy to ghostly apparitions tied to real historical tragedies, these legends force us to question how much we truly understand about the world that came before us. Today, we're uncovering 30 of the most spine-tingling myths and legends from across time, stories that have lingered in the collective imagination, refusing to fade. Some are shrouded in the fog of folklore, while others are rooted in documented events so bizarre, they've spawned theories too strange to ignore. Whether it's a vanished civilization, a phantom army seen on the battlefield centuries after its defeat, or a cursed artifact said to bring doom to anyone who disturbs it, these tales will pull you into the shadows of history. So settle in, but maybe leave the lights on, because by the end, you might just believe that some mysteries were never meant to be solved. In the late 16th century, a group of English settlers arrived on the shores of Roanoke Island, eager to establish the first permanent colony in the New World. But when a supply ship returned 3 years later, the entire settlement had vanished without a trace. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just a single cryptic clue carved into a wooden post, the word Croatoan. This chilling disappearance has haunted historians for centuries, spawning theories that blur the line between fact and folklore. Some believe the colonists integrated with the nearby Croatoan tribe, a theory supported by later reports of fair-skinned, English-speaking natives in the region. Others suspect they fell victim to disease, starvation, or conflict with local tribes. But the most unsettling theories suggest something far stranger: supernatural forces at work, as if the land itself swallowed them whole. Archaeological digs have turned up European artifacts mixed with Native American relics, hinting at possible assimilation, yet no definitive evidence has ever surfaced to close the case. Native oral traditions add another layer to the mystery. Some stories speak of a ghost village where pale figures were seen wandering the woods before vanishing into thin air. Others tell of whispers in the wind, voices calling out in an unfamiliar language. The eerie possibility lingers that the colonists didn't just disappear but were erased from history by forces beyond our understanding. Was it a desperate escape, a tragic end, or something far more inexplicable? The Lost Colony of Roanoke remains one of history's greatest unsolved riddles, a ghostly footnote in the story of America's beginnings. The Hope Diamond glows with an eerie blue fire, but its beauty hides centuries of whispers about tragedy and doom. This 45-carat gem first surfaced in 17th century India, where it was reportedly stolen from the eye of a Hindu goddess statue, sparking rumors of a divine curse. Later, French royalty acquired it, only for King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette to meet the guillotine during the Revolution. While historians debate if the doomed queen ever actually wore the diamond, the legend stuck, fueling tales of a malevolent force within the stone. As the diamond passed through hands across Europe and America, its owners seemed plagued by misfortune. A Turkish sultan who briefly owned it was deposed. A wealthy heiress lost her fortune after wearing it. Even jeweler Pierre Cartier, who sold it to mining heir Evelyn Walsh McLean, warned her of its dark reputation, only for her son to die in a car accident and her family to spiral into bankruptcy. Scientific tests later revealed the diamond's rare boron content gives it that unnatural blue glow, but skeptics still ask, is there something more sinister at work? Researchers point to psychological phenomena like the nocebo effect, where people's fear of curses manifests real misfortune through stress or reckless behavior. Yet others argue that tracing every tragedy back to the diamond ignores simple bad luck or poor life choices. Today, the Hope Diamond rests in the Smithsonian, sealed behind glass, as if the museum itself is wary of its power. Thousands flock to see it, wondering, does the curse sleep or is it merely waiting for its next victim? In the scorching summer of 1518, the streets of Strasbourg erupted with a scene straight from a nightmare. It began with a single woman, a lone figure twisting and jerking in the town square, her limbs moving against her will. Within days, dozens more joined her, their bodies convulsing in a frenzied dance that lasted for weeks. No music played, no festival cheered them on, just the relentless, terrifying rhythm of hundreds trapped in a dance they couldn't stop, some collapsing from exhaustion, their feet bloodied, their hearts giving out. By the time the plague subsided, nearly 400 people had been consumed by this inexplicable mania, leaving behind a mystery that still baffles historians and scientists today. Contemporary accounts describe a city gripped by panic. Local physicians, desperate for answers, blamed hot blood and prescribed more dancing, even building stages and hiring musicians, believing the afflicted needed to dance the fever out. But the cure only fueled the chaos. Modern theories range from the plausible to the extraordinary. Some point to ergot poisoning, a fungal infection in rye bread that can cause hallucinations and spasms, mirroring the symptoms described in Strasbourg. Others argue for mass psychogenic illness, a form of collective hysteria where stress and superstition manifest in physical symptoms, spreading like a contagion through a traumatized population. The timing is telling. The plague struck after years of famine, disease, and religious upheaval, leaving people vulnerable to psychological breaks. Yet folklore offers darker explanations. Medieval Europe was no stranger to dancing manias, often tied to curses or divine punishment. Some blamed Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers, whose wrath was said to drive people to dance themselves to death. Others whispered of demonic possession, a theory the church eagerly promoted. What's chilling is how little separated these explanations from reality. For those caught in the frenzy, the line between physical illness and supernatural terror vanished. Today, the dancing plague stands as a haunting reminder of how fear and the unknown can warp the human mind, turning bodies against themselves in ways science still struggles to explain. Was it poison, madness, or something older, darker, lurking in the shadows of history? The answer, like the dancers themselves, remains just out of reach. Locked away in Yale University's Voynich Library sits one of history's most baffling puzzles, the Voynich Manuscript. This fragile, 240-page book, carbon dated to the early 15th century, is filled with looping, alien handwriting no one has ever deciphered. Its pages brim with bizarre illustrations, naked women bathing in green liquid, constellations that don't match any known sky, and plants that seem to twist into impossible shapes. For centuries, cryptographers, linguists, and even codebreakers from World War II have tried to crack its secrets, and all have failed. Theories about its origins spiral from the scholarly to the surreal. Some believe it's a lost treatise on alchemy, with its strange diagrams representing secret formulas or herbal remedies. Others argue it's an elaborate medieval hoax crafted to deceive wealthy collectors. The most tantalizing and controversial suggestion is that the manuscript holds knowledge beyond its time, possibly even extraterrestrial in origin, the truth. No one knows. Modern computer analysis reveals the text follows linguistic patterns, suggesting it's not random gibberish, but the meaning remains just out of reach. Recent attempts to decode it only deepen the mystery. In 2019, an AI study claimed to identify Hebrew as the underlying language, yet the translated snippets made little sense. Another researcher proposed it was a phonetic guide to an extinct dialect, while fringe theorists insist it's a map to hidden treasure or a portal to another dimension. The illustrations offer no clarity. Their symbolism clashes with any known medieval tradition, as if the artist invented an entire cosmology, perhaps the most unsettling detail. The manuscript's author remains anonymous, their intentions erased by time. Was it a mad genius playing an elaborate joke, a persecuted scholar encoding forbidden knowledge? Or something even the brightest minds today can't fathom? The Voynich Manuscript mocks our certainty, a reminder that some secrets refuse to surrender no matter how hard we stare. In the backwoods of early 19th century Tennessee, the Bell family's farm became ground zero for one of America's most terrifying paranormal enigmas. It started with harmless knocks on the walls, mysterious taps that echoed through the cabin at night. But soon, the disturbances escalated into something far darker. Sheets were ripped from beds, children's hair was pulled by unseen hands, voices whispered threats from thin air, growing louder until they shook the walls. The entity called itself Kate Batts, a vengeful spirit tied to a local woman the Bells had reportedly wronged. Yet what began as eerie pranks soon turned violent. John Bell, the family patriarch, found himself unable to speak or move during the attacks, his body locked in paralysis as invisible claws raked his skin. By the time he died in 1820, doctors found his mouth filled with a strange black liquid, his face frozen in terror. Even future President Andrew Jackson wasn't immune to the horror. When he and his men stopped at the Bell farm on their way to Nashville, legend says their wagon suddenly halted, their horses refusing to take another step. Jackson, a hardened war hero, reportedly declared, "By the eternal, boys, this is witchcraft." The unseen force then flung their luggage into the road, and a disembodied voice warned Jackson to turn back unless he wanted to sleep forever. The future president and his men fled before sundown. Skeptics have long argued the haunting was an elaborate hoax, perhaps a scheme by the Bells' neighbor, Kate Batts, to drive them off their land. Others point to John Bell's own daughter, Betsy, as the culprit, suggesting she faked the phenomena using ventriloquism and hidden strings. But the sheer duration, 4 years of escalating terror, and the number of witnesses make deception seem unlikely. Modern parapsychologists propose the Bell, which could have been a rare case of stone tape theory, where traumatic emotions imprint on a location, replaying like a ghostly recording. What chills the bone isn't just the violence, but the intelligence behind it. The spirit recited sermons word for word, predicted future events, and even answered questions about distant happenings it couldn't possibly know. Before vanishing in 1821, it promised to return in 7 years, and though no second wave came, locals still claim whispers echo near the old Bell property. Whether a specter, a hoax, or something science can't yet explain, the Bell, which remains a haunting reminder, some doors once opened can never fully close. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, a blinding light streaked across the sky over the remote forests of Siberia. Moments later, an explosion erupted with the force of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs, flattening 80 million trees across 800 square miles, shattering windows hundreds of miles away, and sending shockwaves detected as far as England. Yet when scientists reached the Tunguska region years later, they found no crater, no meteorite fragments, no definitive proof of what caused the largest impact event in recorded history. The absence of answers has fueled theories wilder than fiction, each more unsettling than the last. The leading scientific explanation points to an airburst, a meteor or comet fragment detonating 5 to 10 miles above Earth's surface, vaporizing before it could leave a crater. But skeptics note the lack of extraterrestrial debris, a hallmark of such events. Others propose a more exotic culprit, a chunk of antimatter colliding with our atmosphere, annihilating itself in a burst of pure energy. Then there's the wild card Nikola Tesla. Conspiracy theorists claim his Wardenclyffe Tower experiments in wireless energy transmission could have misfired, sending a concentrated energy beam across the planet by accident. Though historians dismiss this as pure fantasy, the timing is eerie. Tesla had boasted of his tower's destructive potential just months before Tunguska. Local indigenous accounts add another layer of mystery. The Evenki people described not just an explosion, but a fire serpent in the sky, followed by months of eerie glowing clouds, phenomena modern scientists still can't fully explain. Some researchers speculate the blast ignited pockets of methane released from Siberian permafrost, creating lingering atmospheric effects. Others point to rare electrophonic meteors, space rocks that emit radio frequency noise audible to the human ear, possibly explaining reports of villagers hearing hissing before the blast. The most unnerving theory, that Tunguska was a test or a warning. In the 1950s, Soviet scientists quietly investigated whether the explosion could have been caused by an extraterrestrial vehicle, a notion later popularized by UFO enthusiasts. Declassified documents reveal military interest in Tunguska's unique energy patterns, with some speculating it mimicked the effects of a theoretical pure fusion weapon. Whether a cosmic accident or something far stranger, the Tunguska event remains a gaping question mark in humanity's understanding of our own planet's vulnerabilities. One thing is certain: next time we might not be so lucky as to have it happen in an empty forest. The story of the Pied Piper seems like a simple fairy tale, a magical musician luring away a town's rats, then its children, as punishment for unpaid wages. But peel back the layers and you'll find a far darker mystery rooted in real tragedy. The earliest known record comes from a stained glass window in Hamelan's church, dated to around 1300, depicting a colorful piper leading children in white robes. By the 16th century, the brothers Grimm immortalized the tale, but its origins stretch back to an actual event on June 26, 1284, when 130 children vanished from the German town without explanation. Town chronicles from the era are chillingly matter-of-fact. It was the year of 1284 since Christ's birth. One entry reads, "On the day of Saints John and Paul, 130 children born in Hamelin were led away by a piper dressed in many colors." No rats, no broken promise, just a sudden mass disappearance. Historians have spent centuries untangling possible truths behind the legend, and the theories are as unsettling as the story itself. One prevailing explanation ties the event to the medieval Children's Crusade, a doomed pilgrimage where thousands of young people marched toward the Holy Land, many never returning. Some suggest Hamelan's children were recruited or kidnapped by a charismatic leader, their fate lost to time. Others point to the plague, noting that "led away" could be a euphemism for mass death, with the piper symbolizing the inescapable grasp of disease. But the darkest theory involves a shadowy figure literally herding children into forced labor or worse, their disappearance later sanitized into folklore to soften the horror. Local folklore twists the knife further. Some versions claim the children reappeared in Transylvania, adding an eerie layer to vampire legends. Another says they were swallowed by a mountain, their voices still heard whispering on windy nights. The town itself never forgot Hamelan's street signs. Today feature silhouettes of the lost children, and dancing or playing music near the supposed departure spot remains taboo. What chills the most isn't the fairy tale, but the grain of truth that inspired it. Was the piper a metaphor for disaster, a predator cloaked in myth? Or something stranger, a collective hallucination born of trauma? The gaps in the historical record yawn wide, leaving room for the imagination to conjure terrors far worse than any Brothers Grimm ending. The first sighting struck like lightning on a clear night, November 15, 1966, near the quiet town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Two young couples driving past an abandoned World War II munitions plant spotted something impossible. A towering figure with broad, leathery wings and glowing red eyes that pierced the darkness. When they sped away in terror, the creature reportedly pursued their car at nearly 100 miles per hour, keeping pace effortlessly before vanishing into the tree line. Within days, more witnesses came forward: a fire chief, a contractor, even a sheriff's deputy, all describing the same eerie being. They called it Mothman, and its arrival seemed to herald something far darker than a mere cryptid sighting. The sightings reached a fever pitch over the next year, with over 100 reports logged. Witnesses described unnatural abilities, hovering without flapping its wings, vanishing mid-flight, even appearing to teleport. Stranger still, many who encountered it claimed to experience eerie premonitions afterward, dreaming of disasters or hearing phantom phone calls. Then, on December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge Point, Pleasant's vital Ohio River crossing collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. The tragedy cemented Mothman's legend as a harbinger of doom, with locals whispering that the creature had been seen perched on the bridge's girders days before the collapse. Investigators blamed faulty eyebar joints, but the timing felt too precise to ignore. Theories about Mothman's origins spiral from the scientific to the supernatural. UFO researchers noted a surge in strange lights over Point Pleasant during the sightings, suggesting the creature could be extraterrestrial or a psychic projection from an alien intelligence. Others linked it to Native American folklore, particularly the Shawnee legend of the Bird of Death, a spirit warning of impending catastrophe. Skeptics dismiss Mothman as a misidentified sandhill crane, its red eye markings and 7-foot wingspan exaggerated by fear. But no crane explains the electrical interference reported during encounters: car radios screeching static, headlights dimming inexplicably, a detail eerily consistent across eyewitness accounts. Decades later, Mothman's legacy refuses to fade. Similar winged humanoids have been spotted near disaster zones worldwide, from Chernobyl to 9/11. Some researchers propose these creatures are interdimensional beings, flickering into our reality during moments of collective trauma. Others believe they're part of a deeper pattern, a phenomenon where myth and reality blur under extreme stress. Point Pleasant itself leans into the mystery. Its Mothman Museum brims with eyewitness sketches, declassified documents, and a statue of the creature looming over downtown. Whether a cryptid, a psychological manifestation, or something beyond our understanding, Mothman endures as a chilling question mark. One that asks, if it returns, will we recognize its warning, or dismiss it as legend until it's too late? The snow-laden slopes of Russia's Ural Mountains hold a secret so gruesome, so baffling, that even decades later, no theory fully explains what happened on that frigid February night in 1959. Experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute had set up camp on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakh, aptly named Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. But by morning, their tent lay eerily abandoned, slashed open from the inside, as if whatever drove them out was so terrifying, they'd rather face -30-degree temperatures half-dressed than stay inside a second longer. When search teams finally found the bodies weeks later, the scene only deepened the horror. Some were barefoot, wearing only thin underwear, their fingers blackened with frostbite. Others lay scattered across the snow, their skulls crushed, ribs shattered by what forensics called a force comparable to a car crash, yet with no external wounds. Most chilling of all, one victim was missing her tongue, her eyes gouged out, while others' clothing showed traces of radiation. The official Soviet inquest hastily closed the case, blaming a compelling natural force, but the ambiguity fueled whispers of something far darker lurking in those mountains. Avalanche theories emerged years later, suggesting the hikers might have been startled by shifting snow, cutting their way out in panic before succumbing to hypothermia. The injuries could be explained by post-mortem animal scavenging or the crushing weight of snow, but skeptics note the tent was on a gentle slope, not steep enough for a typical avalanche, and no snow deposits were found inside. Even stranger, some victims had internal trauma but no external bruising, as if something had shaken them violently without leaving a mark. Then there are the wilder theories. Some point to secret military testing in the Urals, citing reports of orange spheres in the sky that night and the radioactive traces on the clothing. Others whisper of the Yeti, pointing to Mansi legends of Menk, a towering, aggressive creature said to stalk the region. But perhaps the most unsettling possibility is infrasound, low-frequency sound waves from wind patterns around Dead Mountain, capable of inducing panic, disorientation, and even heart failure. It's a phenomenon documented in other haunted locations where unseen forces seem to drive people to irrational terror. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a forensic nightmare, a puzzle where every piece fits until it doesn't. Were the hikers victims of nature's fury, human experimentation, or something ancient and unseen? The mountains keep their silence, leaving us to wonder if some truths are too cold to ever surface. On the fog-drenched shores of Nova Scotia, a small, unassuming island holds one of history's most enduring treasure riddles. Oak Island's so-called money pit has lured explorers for over 200 years with whispers of buried gold, cryptic inscriptions, and a labyrinth of traps so elaborate they've claimed lives. The obsession began in 1795 when local teen Daniel Maginnis stumbled upon a circular depression in the ground, a pit lined with strange, evenly spaced logs descending deep into the earth. Each layer revealed new horrors, layers of charcoal, sticky coconut fiber, and even a slab inscribed with symbols no one could read. Then, at 90 feet, the real nightmare began. Workers struck a flat stone, and as they pried it loose, seawater erupted from below, flooding the shaft in moments. The trap was diabolical, a network of hidden tunnels designed to drown anyone who dared dig too deep. Over the next century, fortune seekers poured into Oak Island, each expedition more desperate than the last. In 1849, the Truro Company drilled through layers of oak platforms, retrieving 3 tiny gold chain links, proof, they believed, of pirate treasure below. But the island fought back. Another flood tunnel was discovered, this one triggering a whirlpool that nearly swallowed a team alive. Then came the tragedies. In 1861, a boiler explosion killed 1 worker. In 1897, another fell to his death when a cable snapped. By the 1960s, the curse seemed unstoppable. 4 more men died in a shaft collapse, their bodies never recovered. Theories about what lies buried in the pit span from the plausible to the fantastical. Some swear it's the lost treasure of Captain Kidd, hidden away with booby traps worthy of a pirate's paranoia. Others point to the Knights Templar, suggesting the pit safeguards holy relics smuggled out of Europe, perhaps even the Ark of the Covenant, the wildest claim. That Francis Bacon's original Shakespearean manuscripts are entombed there, proof of a secret authorship. Modern excavations have only deepened the mystery. Sonar scans reveal caverns beneath the island, while divers report glimpsing chest-like objects in the murk. But the water always wins, refilling every attempt to drain it. What chills the bones isn't just the deaths or the riddles, it's the precision of the pit's design. The flooding tunnels align with celestial markers, suggesting their builders possessed engineering knowledge far beyond 18th century pirates. Even more unsettling, core samples show layers of human-made materials at depths exceeding 200 feet, far deeper than any known treasure cache should be. Is the money pit an elaborate decoy, distracting from a real vault elsewhere on the island? Or does it guard something so valuable, so dangerous, that its creators deemed drowning intruders a fair price to keep it hidden? The pit's latest explorers, armed with satellite imaging and submersibles, swear they're closer than ever. But Oak Island has made fools of optimists for centuries. One thing's certain, whatever lies beneath, it was never meant to be found. In the sleepy desert town of Taos, New Mexico, a sound gnaws at the edges of perception. Not a scream, not a roar, but a relentless, low-frequency hum that slips into homes and minds like an uninvited guest. Since the early 1990s, residents have reported this eerie phenomenon, describing it as a distant diesel engine idling, a vibration just below hearing that never fades. What makes the Taos Hum so unsettling isn't its volume, but its selectivity. Only about 2% of the local population can hear it, leaving the rest to dismiss it as imagination, until scientific teams confirmed something was indeed there, lurking just beyond the threshold of universal perception. Researchers from the University of New Mexico and Sandia National Laboratories descended on Taos in the 90s, armed with microphones and spectrograms. Their findings: the hum registers between 30 and 80 Hz technically within human hearing range, but its source remains a cipher. No industrial equipment, no secret military operations, no geological activity explains its origin. Even stranger, those who hear it describe physical effects: headaches, dizziness, and a pressure in the skull, as if the sound isn't just heard but felt. Some sufferers have fled Taos entirely, desperate for relief, only to find the hum follows them to distant states, whispering at the edges of silence. Psychological explanations abound. Could it be a form of tinnitus where the brain manufactures sound to fill silence? Studies show some hearers exhibit heightened sensitivity to low frequencies, suggesting a neurological quirk. But that doesn't explain why the hum clusters in specific locations or why instruments occasionally detect faint, unexplained vibrations. Then there's the global angle. Taos isn't alone. From Bristol, England to Windsor, Canada, similar hums have plagued communities, each with the same maddening elusiveness. In some cases, like Kokomo, Indiana, industrial fans were eventually identified as the culprit. But Taos resists easy answers. The wilder theories flirt with the paranormal. Some propose the hum is a byproduct of Earth's Schumann resonances, natural electromagnetic frequencies that could, hypothetically, interact with human biology. Others blame clandestine government projects like underground DEW-directed energy weapon testing or even HRRP, the High-Frequency Active Oral Research Program, which manipulates the ionosphere. More chilling are the accounts linking hums to UFO activity, with witnesses in Taos reporting strange LIGHTS Chinese letter with the sound's intensity. What's most fascinating is how the hum exposes the fragility of human perception. For those who hear it, life is irrevocably altered. For others, it's a phantom. Science straddles the line between dismissing it as mass suggestion and acknowledging there's something real, if unidentifiable, at play. The Taos hum lingers like a riddle wrapped in static, a reminder that even in an age of satellites and sensors, some frequencies defy explanation, vibrating just beyond the reach of understanding. Hollywood's golden age had a shadow, a darkness that lurked behind the silver screen glamour. And on the morning of January 15, 1947, it spilled into the light in the most horrific way imaginable. 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress with jet black hair and a smile that charmed everyone she met, was found in a vacant Los Angeles lot, her body severed cleanly in half at the waist, drained of blood and posed with almost theatrical precision. Her lips had been slit ear to ear in a grotesque parody of a smile, and her intestines were meticulously tucked beneath her hips. The press, hungry for sensation, dubbed her the Black Dahlia, a nickname borrowed from a recent noir film, and in doing so, turned a brutal murder into a macabre media spectacle. Los Angeles in the 40s was a city of contradictions, sunlit dreams, and back-alley nightmares. Short's murder exposed that duality. Newspapers ran grisly front-page photos of the crime scene, while cops chased down over 50 false confessions, each more outlandish than the last. The killer had washed Short's body, leaving it eerily pristine aside from the mutilations, suggesting a chilling level of control. Some detectives believed the cuts were surgically precise, pointing to possible medical training. Others noted the lack of blood at the scene, meaning she'd been killed elsewhere, a hidden slaughterhouse the police never found. Theories spiral from the plausible to the outlandish. Some link the murder to infamous surgeon George Hodel, whose own son later accused him based on cryptic tape recordings. Others tie it to the Cleveland torso murderer, a serial killer active a decade earlier who also bisected victims. But the most haunting possibility that the killer was someone who knew Hollywood's underbelly intimately, a studio fixer, a corrupt cop, or even a nightclub figure Short had crossed. Her last known whereabouts traced to the Cecil Hotel, a haven for suicides and serial killers, adding another layer of dread. The case's legacy is as much about myth as murder. Short's story blended with LA noir, the doomed starlet, the seedy glamour, the cops drowning in corruption. Even the crime scene felt staged, like something from a studio backlot. But beneath the legend lies a real woman, her life cut short by a violence so calculated it feels inhuman. The Black Dahlia remains Hollywood's darkest ghost, a reminder that some mysteries don't fade with time, they fester, waiting for a truth that may never come. On the night of February 8, 1855, the quiet villages of Devon, England, woke to a sight that sent chills through even the most rational minds. Overnight, a fresh snowfall had been marked by a trail of hoof prints, not ordinary ones, but perfect cloven imprints, each roughly 4 inches long, burned into the snow as if by scorching heat. The tracks stretched for over 100 miles, appearing on rooftops across frozen rivers, and even scaling vertical walls with supernatural precision. By dawn, panic had taken hold. Some villagers barricaded their doors, whispering of the devil himself stalking the countryside. Others swore the prince vanished mid-stride, as if the creature had simply melted into the air. Local clergy were summoned to bless the afflicted areas, while newspapers scrambled for explanations. The tracks defied logic. They formed a near straight line, unwavering, as if the maker had moved with single-minded purpose. Some witnesses claimed the prince glowed faintly in the moonlight, though skeptics dismissed this as fear playing tricks on the eyes. The sheer scale of the phenomenon ruled out pranksters. No human could have covered such distance in a single night, let alone left prints on both sides of a 14-foot wall. Natural explanations emerged, though none fit perfectly. Certain scientists pointed to escaped kangaroos from a traveling menagerie, their hops leaving paired marks. Others suggested badgers or otters, their bounding gait occasionally creating split impressions. But the most compelling theory came from biologist Richard Owen, who proposed the culprit was a common wood mouse. During thaws, these rodents leap through soft snow, their tiny hind feet landing together, creating a cloven-like stamp. Wind or drifting snow could have exaggerated the marks over hours, giving them an eerie uniformity. Yet even this rational answer couldn't account for every detail: the heat like scorching, the impossible vertical paths, or the uncanny straightness of the trail. Folklore, of course, offered darker interpretations. Devon had long whispered of a spectral black hound with glowing eyes, a harbinger of death in English myth. Others recalled medieval tales of Old Scratch, the devil, who left cloven tracks as proof of his nighttime wanderings among the unfaithful. What lingers isn't just the mystery of the prints themselves, but how they exposed the tension between belief and reason. In an era when science was unraveling ancient superstitions, the devil's footprints became a battleground, a reminder that some phenomena resist tidy categorization. Modern parallels exist, from mysterious crop circles to the eerie skyquakes heard worldwide, all tapping into that same primal question. Was this nature hiding in plain sight, or something older, darker, stepping briefly into our world? The snow melted, the prints faded, but the unease remained. Perhaps the truth doesn't matter as much as the shadow it cast, a reminder that even in the age of enlightenment, the unknown still walks among us, one hoofprint at a time. December 15, 1900, should have been just another day on the Flannan Isles, a cluster of jagged rocks jutting from the North Atlantic, 20 miles west of Scotland's Outer Hebrides. The lighthouse perched there was a beacon of order in one of the world's most treacherous stretches of sea. Yet when the supply ship Hesperus arrived to relieve the three keepers, the crew found the door unlocked, the beds unmade, and a single chair toppled over as if someone had leapt up in a hurry. A cold meal sat untouched on the table, the clock had stopped, and the men Thomas Marshall, James Jucat, and Donald MacArthur were gone without a trace. The scene was steeped in eerie contradictions. The lighthouse logbook's final entry, dated December 12th, noted, "Severe winds the likes of which I have never seen." But Marshall, the second assistant, had also scribbled something more unnerving. "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." The juxtaposition was baffling. Why describe a calm sea if the storm was severe enough to warrant panic? And why, if the men fled during bad weather, were their oilskins still hanging neatly by the door? Investigators combed the island for answers, finding only one clue. Ropes and crates near the landing platform had been smashed as if battered by colossal waves. Yet no storm in recorded memory could have swept three experienced men off a 200-foot cliff without leaving bodies behind. Rational explanations circle around a rogue wave, a freak 100-foot wall of water that might have engulfed the keepers as they secured equipment. Others speculate a fight turned fatal, with one keeper killing the others before throwing himself into the sea. But the untouched meal and stopped clocks suggest something more sudden, more inexplicable. Supernatural theories, of course, thrive in the gaps. Locals whispered of the island's cursed history, citing old Celtic tales of the Phantom of the Seven Hunters, a spectral force said to claim souls during winter storms. Some pointed to the lighthouse itself, built atop ruins of an ancient chapel. Did it disturb something best left buried? The most unsettling detail, ships passing the Flannan Isles that December reported no storms at all. The weather logs from nearby Lewis Island confirmed it. Calm seas, clear skies. So what terrified the keepers enough to abandon their posts mid-meal? The official inquiry blamed acts of God, a verdict so vague it only fueled speculation. Over a century later, the vanishing remains a riddle wrapped in salt and mist. Perhaps the truth lies not in the clues left behind, but in what the ocean refused to give back. Three men swallowed by the unknown, leaving only questions echoing across the waves. The legend begins in the shadows of Jerusalem, moments before the crucifixion. As Jesus stumbled under the weight of the cross, a nameless man, sometimes called a shoemaker, other times a Roman guard, taunted him to move faster. In response, Christ uttered a chilling curse, "You shall wander the earth until I return." And with those words, the man ceased to age, doomed to walk the world forever, a living ghost stripped of rest or redemption. The tale first appeared in written records during the 13th century, quickly spreading across Europe like a dark fairy tale. But beneath its surface lies a troubling history. Medieval versions of the Wandering Jew myth often described him with grotesque anti-Semitic caricatures, hooked nose, wild eyes, even a trail of rotting flesh in his wake. These depictions stoked fears of Jewish otherness, reinforcing the idea of an eternal outcast. Scholars note how the story evolved alongside real-world persecution, from the Crusades to the Spanish Inquisition, giving Christians a supernatural scapegoat for society's ills. Yet the figure also fascinated writers and artists. Goethe wove him into romantic poetry, while Shelley cast him as a tragic, immortal philosopher in The Wandering Jew. In more modern retellings, like Eugene Sue's 19th-century novel, the character became a symbol of suffering humanity, cursed to witness every war and injustice across the ages. Even Hollywood couldn't resist the 1933 horror film The Wandering Jew reimagined him as a gaunt, spectral figure haunting the edges of history. Sightings, too, have persisted for centuries. A monk in 13th century Armenia claimed to meet a man who confessed to mocking Christ. In 1634, a Hamburg shoemaker swore the Jew passed through his town, leaving footfalls that burned into the cobblestones. Victorian newspapers printed breathless accounts of a ragged stranger appearing at battlefields or plagues, vanishing before anyone could question him. Skeptics dismiss these as folktales or cases of mistaken identity, perhaps confused with itinerant mystics or the similarly mythic eternal Jew of German folklore. What makes the legend endure isn't just its horror, but its uncomfortable duality. Is the wandering Jew a villain or a victim, a divine punishment or a warning about the dangers of dehumanization? His curse reflects humanity's oldest fears: endless exile, the weight of time, the terror of being remembered only as a cautionary tale. Today, some reinterpret him as a metaphor for the Jewish diaspora itself, forced to wander, yet surviving against all odds. The story's anti-Semitic roots can't be ignored, but neither can its strange power. After 2,000 years, the wandering Jew still lingers in our collective imagination, a shadow at the edge of history, waiting for an absolution that may never come. One of history's strangest encounters unfolded in the wheat fields of 12th century Suffolk, England, where villagers stumbled upon two children unlike any they'd ever seen. Their skin was a vivid, unnatural green, their clothing woven from some unidentifiable material, and their speech was a guttural tongue no one could understand. The so-called green children of Woolpit were taken in by locals, but their origins remained a riddle wrapped in folklore, malnutrition theories, and whispers of something far stranger. Historical records from the time describe how the siblings, a boy and a girl, refused all food at first, wasting away until they finally accepted raw beans, the only sustenance they'd touch. The boy, weakened by his ordeal, soon died, but the girl survived, eventually losing her green tint as she adapted to a normal diet. As she learned English, she recounted a baffling story. She and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never rose and everything was bathed in perpetual twilight. They'd been herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise like bells and suddenly found themselves in the Woolpit fields, dazed and terrified. Rational explanations range from the tragic to the plausible. Some historians argue the children were Flemish immigrants displaced by persecution under King Henry II. Their green hue could have been a result of chloroses, a severe iron deficiency anemia that gives skin a sickly pallor worsened by malnourishment. The strange language, perhaps a dialect of Dutch unintelligible to English ears, the twilight world might describe the dense, sunless forests of Flanders where refugees hid in fear. But skeptics note gaps in this theory. Why would Flemish children be herding cattle alone, and how did they appear so abruptly in Woolpit? Then there are the more speculative takes. Could the children have fallen into an underground cavern, their green skin caused by prolonged exposure to minerals or fungi? Folklore across Europe speaks of subterranean realms, from the Welsh Annwn to German hollow earth myths. Some even suggest they were accidental travelers from a parallel dimension, their sudden appearance in Woolpit the result of a rift between worlds. The extraterrestrial angle can't be ignored either. Their aversion to normal food, the green complexion, and the description of a twilight world could easily fit a sci-fi narrative of stranded beings from another planet. The girl, once integrated, lived a normal life, even marrying a local man. But her story never lost its eerie edge. What chills the bones isn't just the mystery of where they came from, but how their tale echoes universal fears of being lost, of worlds just beyond our understanding, of strangers who don't belong. Were the green children victims of war, disease, or something science can't yet explain? Their legend endures because it forces us to confront the unknown, not as a distant abstraction, but as two frightened kids in a wheat field staring at a sun they'd never seen before. Between 1764 and 1767, the remote region of Gévaudan in southern France became a hunting ground for something that defied explanation. A creature described as the size of a cow, with a wolf-like head, reddish fur, and a spine bristling with sharp, quill-like protrusions, stalked the countryside, slaughtering over 100 people, mostly women and children tending livestock in isolated pastures. The attacks weren't just brutal, they were methodical. Victims were found with their throats torn out, their heads sometimes severed cleanly, as if by a blade rather than teeth. Panic spread like wildfire, reaching the court of King Louis XV, who finally dispatched royal huntsmen and soldiers to put an end to the nightmare. The first theory, and the official one, points to a freakishly large wolf or a pack of wolves driven to predation by famine or disease. In June 1767, a local hunter named Jean Chastel shot a massive wolf measuring nearly 6 feet long. Its stomach allegedly contained human remains, and the killings ceased, but skeptics noted eerie inconsistencies. Witnesses described the beast as shrugging off musket fire, even healing from fatal wounds overnight. Some swore it walked on its hind legs or used its clawed forelimbs to open gates and doors. The creature seemed to target humans exclusively, ignoring livestock unless cornered, behavior unheard of in normal wolves. Then there's the darker possibility. The beast was a cover for something far more human. The precision of the wounds led some historians to suspect a sadistic serial killer, possibly using trained attack dogs to mimic an animal's savagery. Gévaudan's rugged terrain and superstitious populace made it the perfect hunting ground. Notably, Jean Chastel himself was briefly arrested under suspicion, his killing of the wolf coinciding too neatly with the attack's end. Others point to aristocratic involvement, citing rumors of nobles staging hunts with exotic hybrids like wolf-dog crosses imported from distant colonies. But folklore offers the most chilling lens. Gévaudan's peasants spoke of the loup-garou, a werewolf cursed by the devil. Local priests performed exorcisms, and silver bullets were melted down from religious medallions, a practice echoing werewolf myths across Europe. Some accounts describe the beast with almost demonic intelligence, evading traps and vanishing into thin air. Even today, cryptozoologists speculate about a surviving myosis, a prehistoric carnivore, or a relic population of dire wolves. What lingers isn't just the body count, but the way the beast exposed the era's fractures between superstition and science, peasant and crown. Was it a predator, a man, or a monster? Gévaudan's fields swallowed the truth, leaving only bones and whispers, and perhaps that's how the beast won, not by outrunning bullets but by becoming legend. The misty forests of Norway's Isdalen Valley held a grim secret on that cold November day in 1970. A hiker stumbled upon the charred remains of a woman, her body half consumed by fire, surrounded by scattered belongings. A burned-out passport, empty bottles of prescription pills, and a suitcase filled with meticulously altered clothing labels. The police would soon discover this was no ordinary tragedy. Every clue pointed to a life deliberately erased. The woman, later dubbed the Isdal woman, had been staying at Bergen's Hotel Scandinavia under a fake name, one of at least 8 aliases she'd used across Europe. Her wigs, disguises, and multiple passports suggested a shadowy profession, but it was the coded notebook found in her possession that sent investigators down a rabbit hole. Pages of cryptic scribbles listed dates, cities, and what appeared to be meeting points, phrases like 1500 at the station and contact in Madrid. Deciphering them proved impossible. The numbers and words seemed deliberately scrambled, as if written by someone trained in tradecraft. The Cold War context deepened the intrigue. 1970 was the height of espionage activity in Europe, with Norway strategically positioned between NATO and Soviet interests. The woman's travel itinerary read like a spy's route: Luxembourg, Brussels, Paris, all hotbeds of intelligence activity. Witnesses recalled her speaking multiple languages fluently but avoiding eye contact, as if constantly assessing her surroundings. Even her death scene reeked of professional precision. Though her body showed signs of blunt force trauma, the official cause of death was ruled a barbiturate overdose, yet the fire had clearly been staged, with gasoline traces found on her clothes. Suicide didn't fit the evidence, but neither did a simple murder. Forensic analysis only added layers to the enigma. Dental work pointed to Eastern Europe, yet isotope testing of her teeth suggested childhood years spent in France or Germany. Traces of heavy metals in her hair hinted at prolonged exposure to industrial chemicals, something common among those working in munitions factories or high-tech laboratories. Rumors swirled that she might have been a courier for a weapons smuggling ring, or even a defector caught in the crossfire of rival agencies. Then there were the whispers of Operation Gladio, NATO's alleged stay-behind network of anti-communist operatives. Conspiracy theorists noted that several of her aliases matched names used by known operatives, though no government ever confirmed a connection. Even the Norwegian police's handling of the case raised eyebrows. Key evidence vanished, and the investigation was abruptly closed in 1976, with files sealed for 50 years. What chills the blood isn't just the mystery of her identity, but the eerie efficiency of her disappearance from history. Whoever the Isdal woman was, she was a ghost long before her death, a professional at melting into the background. Were her codes ever cracked? Did anyone mourn her? The valley keeps its silence, and the notebook's secrets remain locked in some vault, waiting for a key that may never come. In the world of shadows, some stories are meant to stay untold. Deep in the Bavarian countryside, the idyllic farmstead of Hinterkaifeck should have been a picture of rural peace. But by the spring of 1922, the Gruber family had spent days whispering about unsettling signs. Footprints in the snow led to their home, yet none trailed away. Tools vanished from the barn, only to reappear in odd places. The maid, terrified by strange noises in the attic, quit just days before the murders. Newly hired, she arrived on March 31st, unaware she'd walked into a nightmare. By April 4th, all 6 inhabitants, from elderly Andreas Gruber to his 2-year-old granddaughter, lay slaughtered, their skulls crushed by a farming mattock. The killer had stayed for days afterward, feeding the livestock, eating from the pantry, even covering the bodies with hay as if taunting the living. What chills investigators to this day isn't just the brutality, but the intimacy of the crime. The killer knew the farm's layout, evading the family's guard dogs, which never barked. Fresh footprints suggested someone watched the house for weeks, hiding in the attic where disturbed dust and a missing set of keys hinted at a lurking presence. Stranger still, neighbors reported seeing Andreas's late wife peering from the farmhouse windows in the days before the attack, a ghostly omen that foreshadowed the horrors to come. Theories spiral from the plausible to the paranormal. Some point to a disgruntled neighbor, possibly motivated by a land dispute or secret affair. Others suspect a transient worker, citing reports of a shadowy figure seen near the farm in the preceding months. But the most haunting possibility, that the killer was someone the family trusted. The mattock used in the murders belonged to the Grubers themselves, and the killer's familiarity with daily routines, milking cows, stoking the stove, suggests inside knowledge. One suspect, the Grubers' former groundskeeper, was questioned but released. He had an alibi, though rumors swirled he'd privately confessed to a priest. Modern forensic re-examinations only deepen the mystery. Blood spatter indicates the victims were attacked one by one, lured into separate rooms as if by someone they knew. No valuables were taken, ruling out robbery. The case was officially closed in 1955, yet files vanished under suspicious circumstances, leaving gaps that fuel speculation. Some whisper of occult connections. Bavaria's folklore is thick with tales of Buschelmer, vengeful spirits who punish the unholy. Others wonder if the killer was a survivor of the recent war, their psyche shattered by trench horrors. What lingers isn't just the unanswered questions, but the eerie normalcy that followed. The farm was razed, the land replanted with trees as if to bury the memory. Yet locals still avoid the area at night, claiming the distant sound of a mattock striking earth carries on the wind a ghostly echo of 6 blows that ended a family and a century of silence that followed. The Atlantic Ocean stretched calm and empty on December 5, 1872, when the crew of the British brig de Gracia spotted a ship drifting erratically near the Azores. As they drew closer, an eerie stillness settled over the scene. No one hailed them from the deck, no faces peered from the portholes. The ship's name, Mary Celeste, was still legible on her hull, but she was utterly, inexplicably abandoned. Boarding the vessel only deepened the mystery. The Mary Celeste was seaworthy, her sails partially set, her hull intact. Below deck, the crew's personal belongings lay undisturbed. A pot of tea still sat warm on the stove, as if someone had just stepped away moments before. The ship's logbook remained, its last entry dated 10 days earlier, noting nothing more alarming than rough weather. Even the lifeboat was missing, yet there were no signs of a struggle, no leaks, no fire, no reason at all for the 10 people aboard to vanish into thin air. Theories erupted like storm waves. Some whispered of sea monsters, giant squid or krakens plucking sailors from the deck. Others blamed pirates, though nothing of value had been stolen. A mutiny seemed plausible until investigators noted the crew's exemplary records and the lack of bloodstains. Then there was the methane hypothesis. Pockets of flammable gas bubbling up from the ocean floor could have triggered an explosion, terrifying the crew into fleeing. The problem, no scorch marks or structural damage supported this. Modern research points to more mundane, yet still terrifying possibilities. Captain Benjamin Briggs, an experienced mariner, might have mistakenly believed the ship was taking on water due to a faulty pump. In a panic, he could have ordered everyone into the lifeboat, only for it to capsize in rough seas. Another theory suggests a waterspout, a tornado-like column of water, striking without warning, scattering the crew. But the truth is, we'll never know for certain. The Mary Celeste became a ghost ship in every sense, her story warped by time and tall tales. What lingers isn't just the mystery, but the way it exposes our fear of the unknown. The sea has always been a vast, indifferent force, swallowing lives without explanation. The Mary Celeste is a reminder that sometimes the most unsettling answer is also the simplest. The ocean doesn't owe us closure. The internet gave birth to its own monsters, none more haunting than Slender Man, a faceless, elongated figure lurking in the shadows of digital folklore. Emerging in 2009 from a Photoshop contest on the Something Awful forum, this entity quickly slithered from fiction into collective fear. With his blank, expressionless face and unnaturally long limbs, he stalked children in viral stories and grainy found footage, tapping into primal fears of being watched. But what's chilling isn't just his design, it's how eerily he mirrors centuries of folklore. Long before Photoshop, Germany whispered of the Der Grossmann, the tall man, a spectral figure who stalked the Black Forest, stealing souls with a touch. Czech legends spoke of the Vysoké Maj, a gaunt stranger who appeared at funerals, his height stretching into the treetops. Even indigenous Algonquin tales describe the Wendigo, a skeletal giant embodying hunger and winter's cruelty. Slender Man isn't new, he's simply the latest skin worn by an ancient terror, the fear of something tall, something faceless, something waiting just beyond the tree line. The legend's spread was as viral as it was venomous. By 2012, Slender Man wasn't just a story, he was a subculture. Teens filmed shaky encounters in backyards. YouTube series like Marble Horn amassed millions of views, and online forums dissected every pixelated frame for clues. But the horror turned real in 2014, when two 12-year-old girls in Wisconsin lured a friend into the woods, stabbing her 19 times to prove Slender Man's existence. The attack forced a reckoning. Was this myth-making gone rogue, or had the internet accidentally summoned something older, darker, into the modern world? Psychologists pointed to folie à deux, a shared delusion amplified by isolation and online echo chambers, yet the girl's testimony unnerved even skeptics. They didn't just believe in Slender Man, they served him, describing rituals and proxies straight from creepypasta lore. The line between fiction and fanaticism had blurred beyond repair. What makes Slender Man linger isn't just his role in tragedy, but his adaptability. He's a digital age tulpa, a thought form given power by collective belief. Unlike traditional monsters tied to specific places or rules, he thrives in the ambiguity of the internet, shape-shifting across forums, games, and ARGs. In Slender, the 8 pages, players wander a foggy forest, their screen glitching as he draws near. In Everyman Hybrid, he's a cosmic force tied to cryptic QR codes and real-world treasure hunts. This interactivity makes him feel alive, a parasite feeding on participation. He's also disturbingly democratic. Anyone can write him into their narrative, adding new canon with a Reddit post or TikTok video. Compare that to vampires or werewolves, bound by folklore's rigid tropes. Slender Man is folklore, unchained, a monster that evolves faster than we can dissect him. Yet the most unsettling question remains: why does this particular horror resonate? Anthropologists suggest it's no accident he targets children. His stick figure silhouette mirrors the crude drawings of childhood nightmares, while his lack of face plays on infant fears of unreadable expressions. The internet, with its endless corridors of anonymous forums and unmoderated content, is the dark forest, a place where kids wander unsupervised, vulnerable to whatever lurks in the pixels. Slender Man is the perfect predator for an age of screens, a reminder that the oldest fears wear new skins, and perhaps that's the true horror. Not that a fictional monster inspired violence, but that the stories we tell online can, under the right conditions, bleed into reality, carrying with them the weight of every tall, watching thing that came before. June and Jennifer Gibbons spoke to no one but each other, and even then, only in a secret language no one else could understand. Born in 1963 to Caribbean parents in a predominantly white Welsh community, the twins became living legends, their silence weaving a cocoon so tight it seemed to bend reality itself. Outsiders called it telepathy. The tabloids whispered of demonic pacts, but the truth was far stranger and far sadder than any myth. From early childhood, the sisters communicated in rapid-fire, high-pitched voices, their words blurred into a private dialect that left classmates and teachers baffled. When forced to interact with others, they'd freeze, their voices reduced to faint monosyllabic whispers. Doctors diagnosed them with selective mutism, but that label couldn't capture the eerie symbiosis that bound them. They moved in perfect sync, finishing each other's sentences in their coded tongue, even as they scribbled dark, fantastical stories in notebooks, tales of violence, control, and trapped souls that seemed to mirror their own isolation. As teens, their behavior spiraled into shared delusions. They believed they were two halves of a single being, that speaking to outsiders would kill the other twin. When institutionalized at Broadmoor Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility, their bond only intensified. Staff reported witnessing scenes straight from a horror film. One twin would suddenly collapse catatonic, as if the other had siphoned her consciousness. They played eerie games of dead, lying motionless for hours, testing whether the other could resurrect them with a touch. Then came the ultimate pact. After years of silence, Jennifer suddenly looked at June in their shared room and said, "It's time to go." Days later, she was dead from acute myocarditis, a heart inflammation with no clear cause. June, for the first time, began speaking normally to others, as if the spell had broken with her sister's last breath. Psychiatrists still debate what truly plagued the twins. Folie à deux, a shared psychotic disorder, is the textbook explanation, but their case defied even that. Their writings, later published as The Pepsi-Cola Addict and Discomania, reveal minds both brilliant and fractured, pouring their loneliness into fictional worlds where words held ultimate power. Some researchers suggest extreme trauma from racial bullying triggered their retreat into a private universe. Others point to the uncanny phenomenon of twin telepathy, where identical siblings develop an almost parasocial connection. What lingers isn't just the mystery of their silence, but the unsettling question of agency. Did they choose their isolation, or were they prisoners of something beyond their control? June, who lives quietly in Wales today, rarely speaks of Jennifer, but in one of their last interviews before Jennifer's death, the twins offered a chilling clue: "We are one person split in two." Perhaps that was the real horror, not the silence, but the fear that breaking it would erase the only self they ever truly knew. Christmas Eve, 1945, should have been a quiet night in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family had celebrated the holiday early, tucking 5 of their 10 children into bed before George and Jenny Sodder retired for the night. But just after midnight, Jenny awoke to the smell of smoke. Their house was on fire. What followed wasn't just a tragedy. It was a vanishing act that defied every law of physics and logic. The flames moved unnaturally fast, as if fueled by something more than wood and fabric. George managed to rescue 4 children, but the remaining 5, Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were nowhere to be found. The fire burned so intensely that by morning, only the basement and a few charred timbers remained. Yet when investigators sifted through the ashes, they found no trace of bones, teeth, or any human remains. The official explanation: the fire had been so hot it cremated the children completely, but the Sodders knew better. A body doesn't just dissolve into thin air, not without help. From the start, the details reeked of foul play. Witnesses reported seeing strange men lurking near the house days before the fire. A neighbor swore she heard something heavy thud onto her roof that night, followed by an explosion. The family's phone line had been cut, and their truck, parked at the bottom of a hill, mysteriously wouldn't start when George tried to drive for help. Even the fire department's response was suspiciously delayed. Their truck got stuck in the mud, a claim the Sodders disputed, as the ground was frozen solid that night. The family's suspicions only grew in the aftermath. George, an Italian immigrant, had been outspoken about his anti-fascist views during World War II, even receiving threats from local pro-Mussolini groups. Rumors swirled about connections to organized crime, not just the Italian mafia, but powerful coal mining interests that may have wanted him silenced. Then came the most chilling clue of all: a photograph mailed to the Sodders years later, showing a young man who looked eerily like their missing son, Louis. The writing on the back read, "I love brother Frankie, Louis Sodder." The family hired private investigators, but the trail led nowhere. Forensic experts later debunked the complete cremation theory, pointing out that even in an inferno, bone fragments and dental fillings would survive. The Sodders turned their grief into a lifelong crusade, erecting a billboard near their home pleading for information. Tips poured in. A waitress in Charleston claimed to have served the missing children years later, while a truck driver insisted he'd seen them being forced into a car that night. But without bodies or concrete evidence, the case remained frozen in limbo, a wound that never healed. Was it arson, a kidnapping, a mob hit disguised as an accident? The Sodder house fire remains one of America's most haunting cold cases, not just for its unanswered questions, but for what it reveals about the fragility of justice. Some disappearances aren't accidents. They're carefully constructed silences, leaving families to claw at shadows for decades, forever wondering if the truth is still out there, waiting to be found. Amid the chaos of Dealey Plaza on November 22, 1963, one figure stood apart, not fleeing, not screaming, but calmly filming the assassination of President John F. Kennedy with a handheld camera. Dubbed the Babushka Lady for the headscarf she wore, this woman became a ghost in the grainy Zapruder footage, her presence raising more questions than answers. While others ducked for cover after the shots rang out, she remained eerily composed, her lens trained on the motorcade as history unraveled before her. And then, like smoke, she vanished, never coming forward with her footage, never identified despite decades of investigations. What makes her disappearance so unsettling is how starkly it contrasts with other infamous figures tied to the assassination. Take the Umbrella Man, another enigmatic bystander spotted opening and closing a black umbrella on a sunny day. Unlike the Babushka Lady, he was eventually identified, a man named Louis Stephen Witt, who claimed the umbrella was just a harmless protest symbol. But while the Umbrella Man's odd behavior found an explanation, the Babushka Lady's silence deepened the mystery. She wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was a potential eyewitness with a front-row seat to one of history's most scrutinized crimes. Theories about her identity spiral from the plausible to the paranoid. Some researchers believe she was Beverly Oliver, a young singer who later claimed to be the woman in question, though her story shifted over time and skeptics noted inconsistencies. Others suggest she was a foreign operative, possibly Soviet, documenting the event for intelligence purposes. The most haunting possibility that she was an ordinary citizen who, realizing the weight of what she'd captured, chose to bury the footage out of fear, or worse, that someone made sure she'd never speak. Unlike the Umbrella Man, whose oddity became a footnote, the Babushka Lady embodies the gaps in the official narrative. The FBI publicly pleaded for her to come forward, yet no one ever did. Even modern facial recognition technology has failed to pinpoint her among the thousands of faces photographed that day. Her film, if it exists, could hold crucial details, angles of the shooter's nest, the trajectory of bullets, or even glimpses of other suspicious figures. But without it, she remains a specter, a reminder that some witnesses slip through history's cracks, taking their secrets with them. Perhaps what unsettles most isn't just her absence, but what she represents, the idea that the full truth of that day might still be out there, locked in an unmarked can of film, or buried with a woman whose name we'll never know. In a case dissected by millions, the Babushka Lady lingers as the ultimate loose thread, one that refuses to be tugged. And in that refusal, she becomes something far more haunting than a conspiracy theory, a silence that screams. On a quiet August morning in 1966, Brazilian police made a discovery that defied all logic. Two men in tailored black suits lay side by side on a hillside in Rio de Janeiro, their faces obscured by strange lead masks molded to their eyes. A waterproof note tucked in one man's pocket read, in precise handwriting, 16:30 hours to be at the agreed location, 18:30 hours to ingest the capsules. After the effect, protect the metal until the signal. Nearby, an empty water bottle and two small towels sat neatly arranged as if part of some meticulous ritual. The men, later identified as electronic technicians Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, bore no visible injuries. Their deaths were ruled cardiac arrest, but the scene whispered of something far stranger than natural causes. This wasn't just a mystery, it was a riddle wrapped in Cold War paranoia and fringe science. The lead masks, it turned out, were no ordinary accessories. Analysis revealed they were lined with radioactive material, sparking theories that the men had been part of a clandestine experiment, possibly attempting to shield their eyes from an energy source beyond conventional understanding. Both were members of a UFO-obsessed group called Operação Proto Operation Saucer, which documented strange lights over the Amazon. Some speculate they were amateur researchers trying to communicate with extraterrestrials, using the masks to protect against radiation from alien technology. Others suggest darker ties. Brazil's military dictatorship was then deeply entangled in covert operations, and the men's electronics expertise could have made them targets or pawns in a game of espionage gone wrong. The most haunting detail, their final moments were eerily deliberate. Witnesses reported seeing the men boarding a bus to the hillside that day, behaving calmly. The note's reference to capsules hints at a planned suicide, yet autopsies found no poison in their systems. Instead, their internal organs showed signs of extreme cellular disruption, as if exposed to an invisible force. Skeptics propose they ingested a homemade psychedelic compound, triggering a shared psychotic episode, but the lead masks resist easy explanation. Why wear them if death came from within? Folklore and conspiracy theories have since woven a tapestry around the case. Some claim the men were attempting astral projection, using the masks to block earthly light while their consciousness ascended. Others whisper of a failed government mind control project, citing declassified documents from the era that mention sensory deprivation experiments. Even the location holds symbolic weight. The hillside overlooks Nitroy, a region steeped in Afro-Brazilian spiritual traditions, where rituals to commune with otherworldly entities are still practiced today. What lingers isn't just the unanswered questions, but the chilling precision of it all. These weren't reckless fanatics, they were methodical men who followed steps toward an unknown end. The lead masks now sit in a police evidence room, their purpose as opaque as the day they were found. In a world where science and superstition often collide, the case remains a stark reminder. Some experiments don't just fail, they vanish into the fog of history, taking their secrets with them. Late-night television in Chicago was never supposed to be a crime scene, but on November 22, 1987, audiences watching WGN and WTTW witnessed something unprecedented. A grinning, glitching figure in a rubber mask hijacking their screens for 90 terrifying seconds. Dressed as Max Headroom, the sarcastic eye-talk show host popular at the time, the intruder's face flickered under strobe lights as his distorted voice taunted station employees by name. "Your love is fading," he sneered before bending over to be spanked by a fly swatter as eerie synthesizer music played. Then, as abruptly as it began, the signal cut back to normal programming, leaving thousands of viewers wondering if they'd hallucinated the whole thing. This wasn't just a prank, it was a meticulously timed assault on broadcast infrastructure. The intruder had overpowered the transmitters atop the Hancock Center, injecting his bizarre footage directly into the feed. Engineers scrambled to pinpoint the breach, but the hacker vanished into the night, leaving behind only glitch-ridden VHS recordings as evidence. What makes the incident so chilling isn't just the audacity, but the technical prowess required. Broadcasting equipment in the 80s wasn't like today's easily hacked digital systems. This wasn't a remote cyber attack. It demanded physical access to heavily secured sites, deep knowledge of radio frequencies, and precise synchronization to override the legitimate signal. Whoever did it wasn't just skilled, they understood the vulnerabilities of analog technology better than most professionals. Theories about the hacker's identity spiral as wildly as the broadcast itself. Some suspect it was an insider, a disgruntled station employee with a grudge and the know-how to exploit weak security protocols. Others point to a shadowy collective of phone freaks, early tech rebels who manipulated telecom systems for fun. The most tantalizing lead came in 2013, when an anonymous post on a hacking forum claimed responsibility, describing the stunt as a protest against corporate media control. But without verifiable proof, the post only deepened the mystery. Even the choice of Max Headroom as a disguise feels symbolic. The character himself was a fractured digital ghost, a fitting avatar for someone who invaded the airwaves only to disappear without a trace. What lingers isn't just the who, but the why. Unlike modern hackers who leak data or demand ransoms, this intruder wanted nothing but chaos. The broadcast coincided with the premiere of Star Trek: The Next Generation, leading some to speculate it was a guerrilla art piece critiquing television's growing reliance on synthetic personalities. Others believe it was pure ego, a high-stakes flex by someone who craved the thrill of violating a system millions trusted daily. Chicago's FCC office launched an investigation, but with no stolen property or financial motive, the case grew cold. Today, the intrusion lives on as a cult artifact, a reminder of a time when the airwaves were wilder and a single rogue signal could shatter the illusion of control. Perhaps the most unsettling detail, the hacker's mask wasn't just a disguise, it was a perfect metaphor. Max Headroom's stuttering, fragmented speech mirrored the glitches in the broadcast itself, as if the intruder wasn't just breaking into the signal but becoming part of its corruption. In an age where deepfakes and AI make digital deception routine, the Max Headroom incident feels eerily prophetic. It wasn't just a hack, it was a warning, one flickering, distorted frame at a time. For decades, motorists across the U.S. and South America have driven over a mystery literally embedded in the asphalt, strange, crudely lettered tiles proclaiming what appears to be a manifesto. Toynbee idea, they read, followed by cryptic phrases like, in Movie 2001/resurrect dead/on planet Jupiter. These handmade plaques, pressed into roads during the 1980s and 90s, appear in Philadelphia, Baltimore, even as far as Santiago, Chile, their messages weathering traffic yet resisting explanation. The tiles reference two towering cultural figures, historian Arnold Toynbee, known for his theories on civilizational collapse, and Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey with its monoliths and star-child rebirth. But the connection between them is anything but clear. Some believe the creator, likely a single, deeply eccentric individual, saw Kubrick's film as a coded blueprint for humanity's resurrection through space colonization, inspired by Toynbee's cyclical view of history. Others argue the tiles are an elaborate anti-establishment critique, linking Kubrick's dystopian themes to Toynbee's warnings about societal decay. The inclusion of media outlets like the Philadelphia Inquirer in later tiles, "You must movie/or die," suggests frustration with ignored truths, perhaps echoing conspiracy theories about suppressed technologies or cosmic secrets. What chills observers isn't just the mystery of the message, but the logistics of its spread. The tiles were laid under cover of darkness, often at busy intersections, using a technique involving tar paper and asphalt sealant to fuse them permanently into the road. Their creator, dubbed the Tile Man, remains unidentified, though theories abound. A 1983 Philadelphia Inquirer letter to the editor, signed by a James Morasco, claimed Toynbee and Kubrick's work proved the dead could be revived on Jupiter. Morasco, a deceased social worker, fits the profile: eccentric, intellectually restless, and living near early tile sites. Yet no concrete evidence ties him to the installations. The tiles' aesthetic, rough, urgent, seemingly carved in haste, places them firmly in the realm of outsider art. Like Henry Darger's sprawling manuscripts or the Watts Tower's spiraling mosaics, they defy conventional interpretation, operating outside institutional frameworks. Their endurance mirrors the themes they espouse: rebirth, persistence, the struggle against erasure. Even as cities pave over them, fragments linger, new ones occasionally surfacing like echoes of an unfinished argument. Kubrick conspiracy theorists have seized on the tiles as proof of hidden knowledge, noting that 2001 Jupiter sequence was allegedly altered due to government pressure. Could the tiles be a grassroots attempt to complete Kubrick's vision, or are they the work of a lone visionary convinced he'd cracked the code to cosmic survival? The answer, like the tiles themselves, is buried just beneath the surface, visible to anyone who stops to look, but forever resisting full excavation. In the small English town of Hexham, two sisters emerged in the 1950s with memories that defied logic, memories of lives they swore weren't theirs. Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock were just 11 and 6 years old when they began recounting vivid, unsettling details about a family they'd never met, a house they'd never seen, and deaths they'd never experienced. But what made their case unlike typical childhood fantasy was the chilling specificity. They described growing up in a place called White House, a sprawling farm with a red gate and a swing in the garden. They spoke of parents named John and Florence and a younger sister who drowned in a river. Details their own parents, John and Florence Pollock, had never shared with them. The kicker, such a family had indeed existed, and the parallels were impossible to dismiss. The Pollock twins' story wasn't just eerie, it was meticulously documented. Psychiatrist Dr. Ian Stevenson, a pioneer in reincarnation research, investigated their claims, noting how the sisters' recollections matched the lives of two sisters from a nearby village, the Matthews family, who had died in a tragic accident years earlier. The older Matthews sister had been struck by a car, the younger one drowning shortly after in a state of grief-stricken confusion. The Pollock twins, born a year after the accident, not only mirrored the sisters' personalities but also bore peculiar birthmarks. Joanna had a mark on her forehead matching the fatal head injury of the eldest Matthews girl. Freudian analysts offered a counterpoint, suggesting the twins' memories were a psychological coping mechanism, perhaps influenced by overhearing adult conversations about the tragedy. Yet this didn't explain how the girls knew intimate details, like the layout of the Matthews home or the name of their dog, that weren't public knowledge. Their case shares striking similarities with other alleged reincarnation accounts, like that of American boy James Leininger, who at age 3 began recalling life as a World War II pilot shot down over the Pacific, complete with accurate aircraft specifications and the names of long-dead crewmates. What sets the Pollock twins apart is the interplay between trauma and memory. The Matthews sisters' deaths were sudden and violent, fitting a pattern Stevenson observed in many reincarnation cases, unresolved trauma carrying over into new lives. Skeptics argue these are examples of cryptomnesia, hidden memories absorbed unconsciously from stories or media. But the Pollock twins had no exposure to the Matthews family's fate. Their parents, devout Catholics, were horrified by the implications, fearing accusations of heresy. The twins' memories faded as they grew older, a common thread in such cases, as if the past life's imprint weakened with time. Yet their story lingers in the annals of paranormal research, a tantalizing blend of coincidence and something far harder to define. Whether psychological anomaly or something transcendent, the Pollock twins force us to confront a haunting question. If memories can outlive their owners, what else might? The streets of post-war Eastern Europe whispered with a new kind of fear, not of bombs or soldiers, but of a sleek black car creeping through the fog. The Black Volga, as the legend went, was no ordinary vehicle. Its windows were tinted impenetrably dark, its engine eerily silent, and its passengers. Those who claimed to have glimpsed them described figures in nuns' habits or men in trench coats, their faces obscured. But the most chilling detail was its alleged purpose: to snatch children off the streets, never to be seen again. This wasn't just urban legend, it was a manifestation of deep collective trauma. The myth first surfaced in the 1950s and 60s, spreading like wildfire across Poland, Czechoslovakia, and the Soviet Union. In some versions, the car was said to belong to Satan himself, its license plate reading 666. Others insisted it was a tool of the secret police, prowling for orphans or undesirables to fuel nefarious experiments. The stories varied, but the core terror remained the same: a faceless force, modern and mechanical, preying on the most vulnerable. What's fascinating is how the Black Volga legend mirrored real historical anxieties. The post-war years saw a surge in unexplained disappearances, many tied to state repression. The Volga GZ-21, the car at the heart of the myth, was a status symbol for communist officials, making it a perfect avatar for public distrust of authority. Rumors swirled that the car's leather seats were made from the skin of abducted children, a grotesque metaphor for how the state consumed its citizens. Even the color black carried weight, mourning for lives lost, but also the shadowy operations of the Stasi or KGB. The legend took on new life during times of crisis. In 1968, as Soviet tanks rolled into Prague, panicked parents kept children indoors, convinced the Black Volga was prowling for new victims. The myth persisted into the 80s, adapting to fresh fears. Some said the car harvested organs for Western buyers, a dark nod to growing economic disparities. Psychologists point to phantom angst, a phenomenon where societies process unresolved trauma through folklore. The Black Volga wasn't just a story. It was a way to articulate the unspeakable, the randomness of state violence, the loss of control, the fear that no one was safe. Yet the most haunting aspect isn't the legend's origins, but its endurance. Decades after the fall of communism, reports of the Black Volga still surface in rural areas, now updated for the digital age, its license plate blurred in photos, its movements tracked on dark web forums. Whether a cautionary tale hijacked by modern paranoia or a ghost story that refuses to die, the Black Volga remains a parked nightmare in the collective memory of Eastern Europe. A reminder that some fears, like the car itself, never really vanish, they just change lanes and keep driving. Along the lonely stretch of railroad tracks near Mocco Station, North Carolina, a flickering orb of light dances in the darkness, a phantom signal that's haunted the swamps for over a century. Locals call it the Mocco Light, and its origins are steeped in one of the South's grisliest ghost stories. According to legend, the light belongs to Joe Baldwin, a railroad brakeman decapitated in a horrific train collision in the late 1800s. Witnesses claim his spirit still waves a lantern along the tracks, searching in vain for his severed head. But what makes this haunting endure isn't just the tragedy, it's the unsettling precision of the sightings. The light doesn't drift aimlessly, it moves with purpose, bobbing as if carried by an invisible hand, sometimes even reacting to voices or flashes of light as if alive. Skeptics have long argued the phenomenon is nothing more than swamp gas pockets of methane igniting as they rise from the boggy terrain. Yet this explanation stumbles when faced with the light's behavior. Unlike the random, floating glow of bioluminescent gases, the Mocco light follows a predictable path along the old rail line, stopping abruptly where the tracks once ended. Railroad workers in the early 20th century swore it would approach their trains before vanishing, mimicking the movements of a cautious brakeman. Even the U.S. Weather Bureau took notice, conducting an official study in the 1960s. Their conclusion: the light defied natural classification, displaying intelligent motion inconsistent with known atmospheric phenomena. The most chilling accounts come from those who have tried to interact with it. Hunters and teenagers daring each other to approach the light report an eerie resistance, like walking into an unseen barrier. Some claim the orb splits into multiple lights or pulses rhythmically, as if responding to human presence. In one documented case from the 1970s, a group of college students flashed their car headlights 3 times toward the tracks. Moments later, the Mocco light answered with 3 deliberate flashes of its own. This kind of conversation blurs the line between folklore and something far harder to dismiss. Perhaps the most compelling detail, though, is how tightly the legend clings to historical fact. Records confirm a fatal train accident near Mocco in 1889, though Joe Baldwin's name appears nowhere in official documents. This discrepancy fuels the debate: was he a real victim lost to time, or a composite ghost stitched together from collective memory? Either way, the light persists, outlasting the railroad itself. When crews removed the tracks in the 1970s, locals expected the haunting to fade. Instead, the Mocco light kept its vigil, drifting along the phantom path of rails that no longer existed. Science may never fully explain why this particular stretch of swamp conjures such vivid illusions, or why generations of witnesses swear they've seen something that defies logic. But in the humid darkness of Mako, where the past feels unnervingly present, one truth remains: some signals aren't meant to be answered. They're warnings, echoes, or perhaps simply reminders that not every light guides the living. From cursed diamonds to vanishing colonies, from phantom hitchhikers to dancing plagues, these 30 myths and legends reveal something profound, not just about our past, but about the way we grapple with the unknown. Each story, whether rooted in tragedy, superstition, or something far stranger, is a thread in the tapestry of human fear and fascination. What binds them together isn't just their eerie details, but the way they blur the line between what we can prove and what we feel in our bones. Why do these tales endure? Perhaps because they're more than just ghost stories. They're reflections of our deepest anxieties, of being forgotten, of forces beyond our control, of history's loose ends that refuse to be tied. The Lost Colony of Roanoke taps into the terror of abandonment, the bell which embodies the horror of the unseen invading our homes. Even modern mysteries like the Max Headroom signal intrusion remind us that fear evolves with technology but never really fades. These legends are cautionary tales, coping mechanisms, and sometimes, chillingly, the only records of those history left behind. But here's the thing: the world is still full of unsolved whispers. Maybe there's a local legend where you live, a haunted bridge, a vanishing hitchhiker, a street where the lights flicker in patterns no one can explain. That's the beauty of these stories. They aren't locked away in history books. They're alive, passed down in hushed tones and late-night conversations. So tell us what eerie tales haunt your corner of the world. Drop them in the comments, and who knows, your local legend might just be the next deep dive we explore. And if you're craving more shadows from the past, hit subscribe, because history isn't just about dates and politics. It's about the goosebumps, the unanswered questions, and the stories that make us glance over our shoulders just in case. After all, as these 30 myths prove, sometimes the past isn't as distant as we'd like to believe. It's right behind us, breathing down our neck.